something about design field and fashion kind of encourages you to say no to many things because that's how you kind of like think you're intellectually superior to others by trying to have the right answers to it. But is it really though? I think there's beauty in saying just yes to like welcoming a lot of information.
In 2008, an insatiably curious 31-year-old graphic designer in Tokyo had an idea. After moving frequently during childhood, Yoon Ahn settled in Japan after college, where she co-founded Ambush Design with her partner Verbal. Ambush initially found fame as an experimental jewelry line before branching out into fashion, becoming one of the most beloved brands of the 20-teens. In 2018, Yoon was appointed jewelry director of Dior Men and has since helmed acclaimed collaborations with Nike and Louis Vuitton, among many others. And it all started with one idea. When you got first into fashion and into launching Ambush, you know, the lines between high fashion and streetwear were fairly marked and delineated. And here we are 15, 20 years later, almost. And it feels like the two are sort of almost indiscernible. Do you think that there is still any sort of difference between streetwear and high fashion?
Definitely the lines blurred. I think it's just part of generation change and consumer change. And also, I think that the type of customer who used to consume high fashion is a different generation, right? So I think that is everything you see is just like it was about to happen.
Do you mean just when you say that the generation shift, just that the younger generation, they have sort of grown up on streetwear, and so then that is sort of the language that they speak?
Exactly.
Okay.
And they also need to adapt because that's what consumers were demanding. You've seen the whole thing, how like everything started to roll out. Honestly, like in Japan, like where I'm from, like we rarely wear like ballroom dresses, even cocktail stuff. Maybe sometimes like cocktail things, whatnot, but like just dressing casually becomes much more, it's like it's almost like given that we dress that way. That's what I mean by I think it just, all those things just got blurred because that's what we're seeking in the market and they had to like supply it.
If high fashion has sort of subsumed streetwear and taken some of its energy, I mean, for better and for worse, right? Where do you see it going now? Like, where's the next energy center that fashion is sort of moving towards?
It's a complex question because I think everything's been overproduced and overdone. I have a feeling like everyone's quite belly full right now, and I think we're gonna see going back to more simplicity of things and kind of resetting things. I mean, I can't really answer for everybody because ultimately it's their decision what to do or what they want to do with their things, but I would like to see the simplicity. The most important idea I had was that my life doesn't belong in a box.
You grew up in Seattle or outside of Seattle?
Partially.
Partially.
My dad was in U.S. Army, so we moved around quite a lot. So,
how did your dad's career in the Army sort of inform your personality?
I mean, like, we're constantly moving, right? Like, every few years, we'd be, like, going back to the States, coming back to Korea, and I'm, like, changing schools. So I kind of learned early on to not dwell on things that much. I mean, it sounds very cynical, but looking back, it kind of helped me. In retrospect, all makes sense, and I think kind of shaped me to who I am, but And also because we're moving a lot, like I spend a lot of time by myself, always like catching up, like doing things. Those are the best time to kind of like discover what you actually really like and get into things, you know?
You spent a lot of time in the public library, I understand.
I did actually. I did.
What were you reading?
It's all the magazines. That's how I got to know all the fashion magazines, actually. Like ID Days to like even Vogue and all those things. I was looking at it and thinking like, oh my God, there's like such a beautiful world out there. I need to be there. And I just made up my mind that I'm like, okay, after high school, I'm like leaving.
Seattle in middle school in
Yeah.
the early 90s is a very culturally exciting time. What were you listening to and how were you dressed and what was moving the needle for you?
Definitely like the indie rock scene, all the sub pop, all the, like grunge thing was like on time at that time. So I was consuming a lot of the college AM stations to like TVs, a lot of zines that you can kind of pick up from different record stores, cafes and all that stuff. And it just kind of like fascinated me. Just kind of, I don't know. I was more drawn to that than like say like pop music at that time for some reason. Maybe it was just the rawness. I feel like I had emotional connection to that, like imperfection. And also I think it's part of rebellion too, because I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. So those bands, songs, everything became kind of like my outlet to like express my like angst in a way.
How would you describe your parents' sort of aesthetics? Like what music did
They
listen
didn't
to?
have aesthetics because they were just like, when we decided to live in Seattle, like, basically they immigrated, right? So they were just working like 18 hours a day. So I will never see them. Like, I'll be going to school, they'll be sleeping because, I think we went to school around like 7 a.m. or something. And then by the time I come home, like, and go to sleep, like, that's when they come back to the house. So, like, only time I got to spend time with them was on weekend.
Really?
Yeah. But for some reason, my dad used to play classical music all the time in the car. So that's the only aesthetic I know of. I don't think they never really had like time to enjoy themselves. Who knows? Maybe they had their own way of doing things, but I didn't notice it when I was a kid.
You mentioned moving around a lot as a kid, and I imagine that's very dislocating and demands the development of certain social skills.
Yeah.
What is the key to breaking the ice and kind of being able to make new friends, constantly?
Openness. The thing about language is this. It's like, yes, like certain things, it would be better if you can actually communicate through words. But human connection at the end of the day, like if you just show up with openness, that's it. That's all you need. And you'll figure out a way to connect with each other and find a way to like, connect and like be friends, you know what I mean? And that's something that I learned like moving around a lot and also just like moving to different countries. Just show up and like show that willingness, and most of the time people are very kind to you.
Who is your biggest early supporter?
I would say my parents. Just being an immigrant child and coming from like Asian background, a lot of times like that generation used to think, certain occupation or certain title meant success to them. But like a lot of the things that I wanted to do, they never stopped me. For some reason, they trust me and they were like, go just do what you want to do. And I think that helped me to be where I am.
You talked about this sort of process of discovery, and in that period, it took quite a lot of work for us to go find new information. And like you said, AM radio stations and going to public libraries and looking through magazines and stuff. We now live in a world where everything is available at the touch of your smartphone. How do you think the process of putting in that work to discover this information actually sort of shaped how you approach things?
I'm just very curious person by nature, so I love just like digging up things. If something catches my eye, like I have to know something about it. So oftentimes, like let's say like even now, once I'm done with work, when I come home, I'm like actually like researching a lot of things, like certain random topics to just general things that, I just want to learn more about. And in that way, like my mind's like always running. And I've like, and because those things actually like kind of fuels me too. Like just learning is a big part of like my journey. So I quite enjoy it. Like I'm always like looking out to see what I can discover. But also it's good to just kind of like keep your mind open. I think oftentimes like something about design field and fashion kind of encourages you to say no to many things, because that's how you kind of like think you're intellectually like, superior to others by, kind of saying certain things and like trying to have the right answers to it. But is it really though? You know what I mean? I think there's beauty in saying just yes to like welcoming a lot of information.
Did you have a sense of what you wanted to do in high school at all?
I did actually. So we moved back and, I just got thrown into public school. And by that time, I completely forgot all my English. So literally I'm like in school, not understanding anything, but I'm like, I have to just like go for it, right? For some reason, like, in Asia, it's a lot about memorizing. Like, they give you all the answers, you need to memorize it. And most of the test is just about answering the right, just from out of your memories. But what I liked about the American, like, at least like my classes, like we had to do a lot of presentation. So we had to like build things visually to like confront the class, to like talk about whatever you're into and do those things. And for some reason, I quite enjoyed putting together things to show. And also another thing was like me working at the library and looking at a lot of the magazines, because I was so fascinated with just images and all that. And I remember just like taking that to my teacher and I was like, what do you call this? Like, I want to do this. And then the teacher was just kind of like, graphic design. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do.
Where do your ideas come from?
All places, like random places. I'm always collecting things. So if you look at my desktop, like I have like so many folders of like categorized like things for certain projects, to the projects I want to work on, or random ideas of like how it should be done and stuff. So everywhere actually, there's no specific place.
Why Boston University?
Because they gave me full scholarship.
That's a great reason.
Yep.
How old were you when you met Virgil?
We met in college towards the end.
Did you have a sense that this was going to be a life-changing relationship?
No, but like meeting someone like that and who kind of like understands, like, I won't say understand. I think everything just kind of happened organically. It was never like, oh my God, let's start a brand or let's do this. It was never that. It was just kind of like, oh, there's a few fun ideas. Why don't we try this and do this?
When you graduated, obviously graphic design is a sort of broadly applicable skill set. What were the kinds of things that you were thinking that you were going to tackle?
I don't know. I didn't know back then. For obviously after college, I got graphic design jobs because, that's what you study and that's what you want to like practice. And I worked at this like small graphic design firm, did a lot of like very corporate things. So that was also a fun process too, because I got to learn how to put together like corporate materials in very like specific ways. It was very boring, but you need that too, because that's pretty much like very basis of like a lot of brand building. So all these things that I've learned actually became very useful later on when I started the brand, because but I knew how to put together those things without asking other people, because I've gone through and I understood it, or at least I had a like basic knowledge of how to do those things.
After graduating college, fairly shortly thereafter, you relocate to Tokyo.
Yeah.
What was the scene in Tokyo like in 2003?
2003, like, Nigo was having his moment, because, Pharrell started to come, and, the babe thing back then, like, getting exported towards outside through Pharrell and Kanye and all those guys. But beyond that, there was also like a lot of music scene that was like merging, and the music's so closely tied to fashion. And something about like Japan club scene, like certain things were very specific, right? Because a lot of things are imported culture, and so they kind of really respect to the T. They're like, if you're into this genre, you need to dress this way, and like, you know, so and so would wear this because of that, and they get those things down. And that's also a fun scene because that's when like the peacocking, I learned the beauty of peacocking in a club, because this is before social media where you actually had to like look fly to get snapped. And I think everyone kind of remembers that time, like, you know, and then you get published in a magazine or like you'll show up on someone's blog and all this stuff. So, and I saw the power of fashion. I'm like, okay, this is how you can use that to like say something without saying something. I do doubt myself all the time. I think that's just part of us being a human. Especially on the things that I've never done before, because I'm just not sure if I'm doing it right or not. But that's just part of the process, and then I've learned to embrace it more.
And so in this period, I know Verbal is in the music scene and making music, eventually with the Teriyaki Boys, and you are doing graphic design work.
Whole bunch of different work, because you know I'm in the new city. You know, it's like I just have to find the ground. So any job came along, I welcomed it, because to me, like, again, I'd rather get paid to learn.
Yes.
Than, you know what I mean? Like spend my money and learn in a hard way. That was always been my attitude. So if someone's like, for example, like Nigo and Toby asked me to do press for Billionaire Boys Club, and I was like, I'll do it. Like, I've never done press or anything like that before, but just because I was like partying a lot and I was getting to know a lot of people, and that's how I started to build all the connections in like fashion industry, because, you know, we'll be hanging out. But so nothing was in vain, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't partying for the sake of partying. Like, to me, it was like, okay, I was picking up everything at that time. So all those things became very applicable to later on when like I started doing my own brand.
You started with jewelry.
Yeah.
And what was the first piece, and what was the process of, you know, even wrapping your head around how to make that and getting it done?
I mean, he was, you know, at the time, like all those guys were making like huge pieces with Jacobs. Verbal was also making a lot of like actually big pendants and those things, and he made this like a knuckle ring with POW on it. And that like we shrunk it into the small thing to just give it out to friends. And that was just kind of, I guess, the genesis of it in a way, because we weren't even trying to do a brand, and we just made it for fun to hand it out to people. And like, you know, all those guys picked it up, like Yay and all those, you know, they just,
Big Sean,
yeah. And they just kind of like blew up, and you're like, okay, what do we do with this? And I remember just thinking like, those things could happen to you, right? But it's almost like someone just invites you into the studio and you just kind of sang for fun, and then it became a hit. And you have to like sit down and think like, do I just want to be a one-hit wonder, or do we just see where we can go with this? And that was the start.
With an unexpected organic hit on their hands, Yoon and Ambush began to design clothing, initially as a means to market their jewelry. But by the mid-20-teens, Ambush had made its Paris runway debut, propelling Yoon to the upper echelon of contemporary designers. I'm curious, where does the name Ambush come from?
He named it. He was like, I don't know, he's just like, let's just like call it Ambush so we can just release things whenever we feel like. I'm like, all right, that's cool.
And it was that simple?
Yeah.
How did the jewelry line sort of evolve, and at what point did you start to wrap your head around apparel?
Fast forward a few years. Along the way, like we realized like, okay, there's a sale season and all those things. And, you know, you need to have a lookbooks to show to buyers, to press and all those things. And, you know, when you shoot those things, like you need clothes. Like I wasn't about to like shoot jewelry on like naked body, right? And I didn't want to put other brands inside the picture. So like, let's just make a few tops. So at least they become like canvas in the background. So that's how we started making just like a few tops. And then that just got expanded into like pants, and like next thing you know, we became like LVMH finalist, and it kind of like grew from there. So it's just everything's been very organic, just like along the journey of like doing it, you realize like, hey, this is missing. Maybe we need to make this to put it in there. And then from there, like, you know, buyers want to buy it, then you start to see like, oh, maybe there's a potential in adding a little more pieces into this, and then like, let's zoom out. Maybe we need the full look, or maybe we need this. And it was just, everything was just like step by step. It was never like, oh, it's like 3 years from now, let's do this. Like, we're going to do this. Like, it wasn't that. It was just like always paying attention and noticing things and needs within our structure, and also need from outside. And then we just apply it. And then we'll just kind of add and then shape it. I think certain things, you know, I do look back and be like, I could have done better, but I don't look at it as failed. I think it's just mistakes. I think a lot of mistakes came from just trusting other people's opinions sometimes, and never turned out good. So you just learn from it, and you just do better next time.
What were the biggest challenges and or missteps in those first few years as you were?
A lot, because I didn't go to fashion school, and also starting a business in itself is like a lot of learning curve that you need to overcome. So yeah, there was a lot of mistakes in the beginning. Like staff would add like extra zeros, and you're like, what the with like, you know, to a lot of stuff. But you know, those things like you learn on the job, and then you just make sure not to repeat it next time.
You seem to balance left brain and right brain activities. You're both organized and disciplined, and also extremely creative. How do you, in your own head, sort of keep these things from colliding with one another when they're misaligned?
I don't like making abrupt decisions, so I do think things through, and I do think about it over again and again until like, and I can't quite narrow it down to certain information, and then I just kind of go for it from there. No, because I don't like, yes, like the ideas can change, right? Along the process. I think we talked about that earlier. But I don't like to say or give direction to people unless I'm at least 80% sure.
It's a very specific,
yeah. And it doesn't have to make sense. It could be a little bit abstract at that stage, but I'm just gonna go with that and then define it from there, not like from like 10% stage. Then it's gonna confuse everybody, right? Because I'm probably gonna change my mind. So that's usually just my thinking process.
When you are working, you know, and you have deadlines and all of those types of things, do you have a process for funneling the creativity into a repeatable format?
Certain stage, yes. Like I do a lot of research, so obviously I gather a lot of materials. From there, I narrow it down to more core, like what seems to be the right direction. And then I scout the right team or the members from, you know, on our team to like tackle certain tasks so I can focus on like what I need to focus on. And then we just run from there.
You've collaborated with a number of blue chip brands over the years while running your own, you know, entrepreneurial enterprise. If you were to give advice to a young designer or a young creative that may walk down that path, what is the key to navigating those relationships?
I think first, any designer who wants to become a designer, it doesn't matter which industry, should really spend that time honing into their purpose. Like what purpose you want to cultivate. You know what I mean? Just because like I've done what I've done, like, and if I write out a prescription of like how to do that, it's not gonna work for you. Because obviously you're not me. And same, like I could look at somebody who have had a wonderful career and trying to copy every step of it, I won't be able to achieve that either. So I don't like to give advice on like, you got to do this, you got to do that. But one thing that I can give for sure, why I'm where I am is because I think I understood my purpose. And I always wanted to use fashion to exercise different ideas. That's why I've called Ambush like fashion platform. And that's why I was able to get these collaborations to display that. You know what I mean? And also that's why they came to me too, because they saw that I was like, we can do something different than other people.
The discovery of that purpose, where in your professional life did that revelation happen?
In the beginning, like going back to start of the brand, like I've shared, I kept it organic for the reason is like just being honest. Hey, jewelry, all those stuff, there was never gender to me because I wear a lot of men's things. I wear a lot of men's jewelry, vice versa. In Japan, like, a lot of guys wear girl stuff. There was no like, ooh, like only men can go into here, a woman can go here. So I saw like, hey, like, do we need to define into gender? So I think we're one of the pioneers doing like unisex stuff from the beginning. I still remember like one of the really well-known fashion critic when I met them in Tokyo, and they're just like, unisex is such an ugly word and it doesn't exist, but where are we now? So what I'm trying to say is just be honest to your vision or, like whatever you believe in and trying to define those things and just run with it. Success to me is knowing that I've done my job and I feel good about it.
While you're doing this and you're globetrotting and being the face of the brand, you're also involved in all of the unglamorous sides of running a small business. Like, what is the percentage breakdown between what I would describe as the fun part and the sort of tedious, unpleasant part of running?
I think the fun part is the outcome of those tedious things. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people forget. A lot of those projects take sometimes like year to year and a half to come to completion, some less. But it's a lot of work, actually. Yeah, because my schedule is by choice. I'm traveling and doing a lot of these things because I love traveling and just kind of like expanding my mind and meeting different people and just actually witnessing it in person rather than over the internet. So I've kind of curated early on that, hey, eventually, like I wanted to be in position that I'm in, then what can I do to be there? So I kind of like set it up to be where I am now, right?
You've talked about the sort of significance and importance of reference in creating the ideas. But then there has to be that sort of balance between nostalgia and looking forward. So with your own stuff, once it's done, that is the past. And
yeah, I don't have a personality where I just kind of like lag on to things. Because I feel like the more you kind of claw into stuff, like it kind of like puts you at a stop mentally. So it's almost like a chef, like who cooks all day. They're not gonna come home and like try to eat their own things. Like I look at that way, like my ideas, I'm like, I've done it. So next, like.
Driven by a determination to continue innovating, Yoon opened the 2020s with high-profile projects with Nike, including a collaboration with Naomi Osaka. Yoon's vision is fueled by her wide-ranging curiosity, opening new outlets for the future of her brand. Tell me about your relationship with Nike. And am I reaching if I were to say that your 2019 dunk maybe set the table for the Panda dunk explosion?
Probably.
Okay.
I don't know. Panda's been classic.
Fair.
Yeah.
I just was going through the images and I was like, this feels like these things are connected, but maybe I'm...
Panda was there before my dunk, so I can't
Okay.
I can't get the credit for Panda.
Fair. But yeah, how did you develop your relationship with Nike?
Started right after LVMH Prize. They reached out and see if I wanted to work on a collab with them, and I was just like, cool, let's do it. I mean, it's Nike, like who would say no to Nike, right? It was a little bit learning curve in the beginning because I'm just like, okay, what do we do with the sneaker? Because you get kind of like, oh, like you don't want to mess it up because it's Nike, like it's your first collab and all this stuff. But I kept it really honest. I didn't go in, trying to be like a sneakerhead or any of that. I was just more like, hey, like I like unisex piece, like we're coming from that space. Also, I didn't really actively participate in sports, so I was just thinking like, can I create something that I can look good in the gym as well as like at nighttime? Because I was just coming more from a consumer's end to think like, what do I want if I wasn't a Nike consumer? Like, what would get me like want to go into that door? So like that fur jacket I think you saw with the big swoosh to the track setup with like the reflective piping, all that stuff, it was just that. It was just like thinking like, hey, they're actually something that you can wear and play sports.
And obviously you recently released a very awesome tennis capsule and dressed Naomi Osaka. You had a very big moment at the US Open. What was the auspice for the giant bow, and how did that whole outfit come together?
Naomi actually came to me. Well, she asked Nike to have me come in to design her US Open. That was 2 years ago. Like, she just gave birth. And we were just kind of like talking about different things. Like, what we like, what we're into, all those things. There's a lot of ideas actually happen in the beginning. And what you saw is actually evolution of all those things kind of evolving and final product of it. But I just kind of stuck to like her inspiration, us both coming from Japan and all the subcultures that we love about Japan. And I've kind of honed into the Lolita culture. And I think in the West, the Lolita thing is just more about like, that novel. But in Japan, the Lolita fashion has a different context to it. It came in like in the 90s when like so much social pressure was on women to behave and act a certain way. A lot of women wore those like cutesy doll looks to kind of like escape from that mentally. And it was like perfect thing for her to like wear that big bow, frills and all those things in this like huge moment as her it's her comeback moment, and there's a lot of pressure and there's like, I can't even imagine because I'm not an athlete, but just people watching you and expecting how you're gonna win and all those things. And I just wanted to feel like a little girl again, having fun playing that.
Do most of your ideas come from solving a personal problem?
Yeah, because I kind of tend to like detach it and look at from third person point of view. Like, what can I bring? Like, what's missing? Like, or what would consumers want it more than like my own desire. Obviously, like my taste and those things will go in, but like that's usually how I think.
What is good design to you?
Design in itself is problem solving, right? So the problem in itself is like, okay, what is the subject matter here and what you want to achieve, and has that message we're able to translate to the audience. And good design is that. It's like when all those things meet and then actually like gets connected to people, then I think that's what good design is.
What are the products that you have not expected to do well, or ones that you thought, I would bet the house on this moving, and then it just, for whatever reason,
it varies. Like sometimes like I'll just like really be focused on designing something and I'm like, this is it. Like this is gonna be like, this is it. But then like it doesn't sell. And then like it's the most random thing that I didn't really like care about, like people like it. So that's a fun part of it. It's You know what I mean? Like you design something. That's why, I think it's important for designers to just have fun designing it, let it go. Because the kind of emotional connection like consumers are gonna develop with what you produce, it's really not up to you. And it's fun watching it actually. My biggest advantage, I would say, is that I operate in the gray zone more than the black and white zone. So I always leave enough room for things to flow through. I think that's very important because a lot of the things get done during the process. So, not just get stuck on certain idea of your own, but just being open to many things.
How big is the team that you managed at this point?
Our Tokyo office, we have about, including the shop staff, part-time, all that stuff, I think we have about like 45 people. Yeah.
That's a lot of personalities.
Yeah.
What are the things that you look for in a candidate when you're making a hire?
Depends. Because obviously like the shop staff's a little bit different than the office. But something that I encourage at the office, because I like to run it, I encourage like everyone to think like entrepreneurs. I don't like to micromanage people. So I usually, the way my style of management is like within the team, I've kind of make smaller groups and I give certain tasks and like obviously with the right fit, right? Mm-hmm. And then I have them run it and then come just report to me and check in with things. Obviously, I'm in all the group chats. I check everything and then, I follow through. It's never like, I don't notice things, but I think that's the best way of running stuff, just almost like IT, Mm-hmm. I think autonomy is good. I like people who like to work as a team and the group, but also independent enough to just kind of like bring what they can, the best.
You have a very clear aesthetic, or at least to look at the line and to look at the way that you present, it is very coherent and very dialed and very purposeful.
Yeah.
What is the key to aligning those people, given, that you don't want to micromanage, you want them to be sort of entrepreneurial in their approach, but to maintain the integrity of your vision?
First of all, I oversee everything. And it's kind of going back to the 80% thing where I've just kind of think things through to that point and then I give direction. So it's pretty much like, which direction you're going. It's not like, boom, like they're all like, where do we go? It's never like that. And then also I make sure I follow through things and I check things out and kind of bring them back if they go off tangent. Just stay here, like within this. And I always kind of give them a way to look at big picture. Like this is where we want to go. This is why I brought this project in and for a certain purpose and a reason. So they understand why we're doing it. And I think those things really help the team to understand like the journey, why we need to go there or why we're going there. I think it's sometimes when you get stuck, like I just go for a long walk, just like really long walk. It seems to help me. Everything just comes to a stop and just something about walking and the motion of it helps me to kind of release that and let it go. Another thing I do is when I get stuck, I just go work on different things to get my mind off of that subject and just come back to it. Another thing I do sometimes is just like completely, I just don't think about it. And I feel like that kind of refreshes everything.
Are there any parts of management or leadership that you are actively pushing yourself to be better at?
One thing is like sometimes I can get pretty impatient with results, so I push people a lot. That's where I'm just like, okay, sometimes I'm just like, I give them, like I'm learning to give more spaces to people to kind of figure it out or come back to me with it instead of just jumping to conclusion when I don't get my answer the way I wanted to get it done. And that's one area I'm like getting better at.
You have been doing this now for quite some time with Verbal, and how has your creative relationship evolved over the course of these 15, 20 years?
Well, we kind of split it. We know the strength and the weakness. So I think that's how we operate at the office is like those who are good at certain things, we amplify it. And that's how everything's structured. I'm good at certain things, I just run it. He's good at certain things and he runs that. And because we have clear understanding of what role we play, not just us, but all our employees and everyone, we're able to run together smoothly.
And what roles do you serve in?
I mean, I'm definitely big picture person. I like to think about creative things. On the creative side, I run most of it.
Okay.
And he's very he likes admin things, so I'll let him do that.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah. Very important though.
And is it challenging to navigate the professional life with the personal life?
For me, no, because it's hobby became work. So the lines kind of blurred than most people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not oh, here's my job, I need to make an earning, but then my passion's over here. It's not that. It's just everything just became together. But I do have to, because everything became together, my mind's nonstop, right? I come home and I'm still researching and doing things. So I try to, I've come to learn how to kind of integrate it better, where, I've learned to kind of step away to take a break, get some air, do different things, and then come back, then just thinking about work 24/7.
Yeah, to that point, do you get burnt out?
Yeah, of course. Especially when output is required more than the input. And, what you do run out of fuels time to time. But, and realistically, I can't just stop just because I'm not inspired. Machine's running. So sometimes you have to just pull it through, and then you have to find a moment to take a breath and then breathe, and then just step away for a little bit, calm down, recharge, and then come back and just run again.
What are the sort of ambitions for Ambush in the near future?
I always look at Ambush as a fashion platform. That's always something that I've shared with people. It's not just fashion brand that we just do fashion. Fashion can be translated into different industries, where something like gaming, it could become skins, to in a Web3 space, it could turn into NFT form, to can it be recently we threw a party with my favorite media in Tokyo, those guys called Sabukaru. We're just also talking about can we create a space where all this lost subcultures can become live again. So we will set the tone, dress code, and then we we come together to kind of have fun and having a party, but then also that's also where people can wear clothes to show up to have fun, right? That's one way of using fashion to translate your ideas. So that's just how I look at it. And the ambition that we have is that it's just can we go into different industries that fashion can play a different role.